Hello, everybody, and welcome to Scripps Research, fully interactive resources for students and teachers or FIRST. My name is Rosie Alvaran-Sekler, and I will be your moderator this afternoon. If this is the first time that you join us, Scripps Research is one of the largest nonprofit private biomedical research institutes in the nation, and our mission is to develop the next generation of medicines and diagnostics. We invite you to visit our website after the webinar, and if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to email us or to call us. We hope that you enjoy today's webinar. For today's presentation, as the title suggests, we're gonna be talking about internships in research, and we have a panel of 3 students at various stages of their career, and we'll be talking about their experiences in their internships in research at Scripps or at other places. And also they're going to be talking about their research work. Before we begin, if you have joined us before, you probably know some of the housekeeping items we always like to review. As a reminder, your video has been disabled and you have been muted. The only way that you have to communicate with the panelists and with myself is using the Q&A button. So you, at this moment, maybe you want to hover over the bottom of your screen. There's a menu, there's a Q&A button there. Feel free to type in your questions at any time. And we'll be taking your questions on the second half of the presentation. This is, the Q&A button is if you are in the Zoom platform. If you are joining us on Facebook Live, you want to use the comment box to add your questions, or even if you want to give it a thumb up, if you are liking what you're seeing, we appreciate that. We also want to interact with you, and we're gonna be doing polls throughout the presentation. I think that at this time it's a good opportunity to practice taking a poll. And with the first set of questions, what we want to do is to get to know our audience. And so if the poll should be coming on your screen, there it is. If you can take a moment, please, to answer the questions. So basically who you are and why you're joining us today. And I'm gonna be sharing the answers with all of you. So I see that most of you are college students, but only 12% of the votes are in. So I'm gonna give a few more seconds for other people to log in their answers. So I see that we have a mixture of high school students and college students. And there are many reasons why you have joined today. And please feel free to ask specific questions, again, on the second part of the presentation. I think without further delay, I would like to move on with our panelists. And I'm very excited to have our panelists today. I know all of them personally. They've been through our internship programs on the Florida campus where I am based, and I want to welcome Piers Herman. This is an undergraduate intern. Courtney Hegner, she's a graduate student, but she was an intern before in the SURF program. And Ling Dang, she's a high school student and a high school intern. Welcome, and thank you for being here today. I think that to start, I'm just gonna ask all of you to briefly introduce yourself. Say, a little bit about your academic history and where you're at right now, and maybe a little bit about your research project. So let's go Lynn first, and then Piers, and then Courtney. So Lynn.
Hi, I'm Lynn, and I was part of the Keenan Fellows program the summer of 2019 in the Scampiavian Spicer Lab. There, I helped develop a test platform in order to help better the drug discovery process. And right now I'm a senior at Suncoast Community High School, and I will be attending the University of Southern California next fall.
Thank you. Piers?
Hello, everyone. My name is Piers Herman. I'm currently a senior at Florida Atlantic University's Harriet L. Wilkes Honors College. I've been interning at Scripps Research Institute since January of 2019. I work in Courtney Miller's lab, and in the Miller lab, I study microRNAs and their association with PTSD. I also look at certain non-muscular myosin inhibitors and their relationship with drug addiction.
Thank you. Courtney?
Hi, everyone. I'm Courtney. Like Rosie said, I'm a current graduate student. I'm a first-year grad student in the Marks Hundreds lab. And as Rosie also mentioned, I was a surf intern the summer of 2018 in Matthew Pipkin's lab. In that lab, I studied the role of chromatin regulators in the differentiation of T cells. And currently I'm studying, in Mark's Hundreds lab, I'm studying small bowel homeostasis and the possible role that glucocorticoids are playing in that.
Thank you so much for that. I think I'd like to start off the conversation by maybe asking you to go back a little bit in time. I'm sure that some of the attendees are, they want to apply to our internship programs or other places, and then they might know that they love science, but they don't really know what to expect of an internship program in research. So maybe go back and talk a little bit about the actual project that they gave you for, especially in the beginning. I know that Lynn and Piers might be still working on the same project, but in the beginning, how it felt, and some of the things that you learned, you know, coming from your expectations, what you learned through the internship. So again, let's go Lynn and Piers and Courtney.
So when I applied, and then like before I was going into the program, I had no idea what to expect really. I knew what lab I was going to be in, but I didn't really know what type of project I would be giving. But for the high school program, each person's project will be like based off of what lab you're in, but we're all assigned one, and then we all get a mentor and we'll present on it at the end of the summer. So like I said before, I helped develop a test platform in order to better the drug discovery process. And basically I was placed with engineering, and in my lab we have a lot of high-tech machinery that enabled us to find potential chemicals that could be drugs in the future. And my platform just helped quality control our an important part of the machines that we used. And sorry. And this internship really helped me experience firsthand what working in a lab and doing research entailed, and it just helped me realize that this could be a career path that I could be interested in, because even though I knew I liked science before, I just never knew if I never knew if I really wanted to do this for sure, just due to the lack of exposure. So
Great, thank you. Piers?
So before I started interning at Scripps, I was kind of overwhelmed because there's just so many directions that you can take in research. There's so many different kinds of research labs. You have neuroscience, chemistry, immunology, the list goes on and on. Once when I got into my lab, I really did not know what to expect. So that was my first research experience. And essentially what I learned is like the postdocs there and your principal investigator, they are there to help you. They don't want to see you fail. It's a very kind of nurturing environment. They first started me off with like teaching me like lab etiquette skills, teaching me how to do some histology work, which is essentially slicing tissue and mounting it on slides. Then they taught me imaging using a fluorescent microscope. And then within a couple of months of my internship, I was working with the animals running neuroscience behavior experiments. It was just a really great environment. They want to see you succeed. And like, just like to get on projects, if there's a project you're interested in, just go and ask them, like just say, hey, I want to be a part of this, honestly.
Awesome. Courtney?
Yeah, so I have a slightly different experience. So I started doing research in undergraduate at Mount Holyoke College, where I went, and I was a biochemistry major. So I worked in an RNA biochemistry lab, and my school is a small, historically women's liberal arts college, so there was no grad students. So we had our own projects there, and I was able to do an internship and stay the summer between my sophomore and junior year and continue that research project. So I had my own project. I drove all of the research. Really, the only other person that I could go to in my lab for help was my PI. Well, also the other members once they start learning other techniques that we all used, but mainly it was just from my PI's help. And then when I did the surf internship the summer of 2018 at Scripps, I switched completely to immunology, which was difficult and interesting, but I enjoyed it a lot. And so I didn't really know or have much experience with immunology at all. So I worked closely with a graduate student mentor, and I had my own project, and we used a lot of the same techniques that my mentor used. So we would kind of do them side by side. But again, I was driving my own project and she was doing her own. So I had that mentorship that I could go to my graduate student for help and to teach me new things. But it was also like my own kind of project for me to build upon. Yeah.
That's great. I think that summarizes very well what can you expect walking into a laboratory, and definitely different experiences. So thank you so much. So maybe what are some of the skills that the students should be focusing on or working on? It could be either some classes or soft skills that they have to work on that you suggest. And let's go again in the same order: Lynn, Piers, and Courtney.
I honestly think hard work and dedication to your goals are just very important traits to develop as you're going into your journey.
I think honestly time management, because if you're a college student, you have like your classes you need to dedicate a certain amount of time to. You want to do good in those. You also have certain social obligations, and you got to find time to work in lab. And even when you're working in lab, let's say you go and you set up an experiment and it takes 6 hours, and you have 3 hours in between like the start and finish where you have literally nothing to do. Like that's just the perfect time to start up another experiment. Just honestly planning out your day, planning out your experiments, and I'd say that's the key to success in the lab: time management.
Yeah, to build upon both what Piers and Lynn said, I agree. And I also think organization and self-motivation are really important. So again, organization, it's good to know what experiments you have going on, what you need to do in the future. If you have long experiments going on, you need to plan out your time points. So organization is very key to keeping everything on track and to know where you're going and to keep your goals in check. And also self-motivation. So sometimes research gets hard. It's not going to always be easy. So you need to be able to be determined and self-motivated to keep going, to push through, and to get your research done to hopefully answer the question that you're looking for.
That's great. And also to add to that, I normally tell students that, especially in high school, you know what when they in a class, in laboratory class, when they give you an experiment, they know the answer. So part of doing a research internship is finding out that the excitement is on not knowing the answer. And so you have to remain curious while you do science, and like you said, keep yourself motivated to find that answer for the problem that you're researching. So this next question, maybe you want to approach it in a different way. So I know that some of you apply to very competitive internship programs. So maybe talk a little bit about what makes an application successful, or in the case of Courtney and Piers, I know that you, in your colleges, you had to figure out who had an opening in the laboratory and who would like to bring you in. So maybe how you first approach a faculty member to get into a laboratory. So feel free to answer the question in either way. And again, Lynn, Piers, or Courtney.
Okay. I think this holds true for any application, like especially college applications and stuff like this. You just really want to let your personality shine through, especially your strong points. And you just really want to show that you're interested in participating, not just for the resume, but for like just because you're interested. Like you really want to better yourself. So yeah.
Okay.
So what I did is, once I determined like I wanted to work in a neuroscience, addiction, behavior lab, I contacted various PIs, not a lot. I only contacted 3 PIs, sent them out nice professional emails, started with like, hello, hope you're doing well. I also read a few of their papers on Pubmed, and I'll just like with Courtney Miller's lab, I said, hey, I'm really interested in microRNAs, and I find this finding so interesting. And I was talking with many of my professors, and not that many people do that. And then also just like good interviewing skills, because before they want to accept you to be an intern, they want to meet you, like make eye contact, shake hands, all that kind of stuff.
Great. Courtney?
Yeah, so I think kind of what both of them said before, you have to let your personality shine, and you also have to say what's unique about you and what you can bring to the lab and why that lab seems to be a good fit for you. I think you also have to kind of, how do I put this? You have to, you have to make sure that you can clearly say why you're interested in this lab and what excites you about that science. So you don't need to be an expert. So like I said, I switched from biochemistry to immunology. You don't need to be an expert to join a lab. It's just that excitement and the willing to learn will show that you're a good fit for that lab. As to go and ask faculty. So like I said, my school was different. So it was a small undergraduate college. So we actually had a few different programs where you can meet with different PIs that were interested in taking students into the lab. So I just reached out to a PI that I knew she needed students for. But like I said, it was all undergraduate research, so it was slightly different. But for like my Scripps internship, I looked at the faculty and I made a list of the faculty that I thought were interesting and that I liked their research and that I thought I could learn and get good experience from. So I think that's a good way to approach it. It's not like necessarily that you have to join a lab that is going to be what you're going to do forever. It's an experience to figure out what you want to do with your life and to get experience in labs.
Right. Very good advice. All that. I want to stress out the importance of conveying your message both orally and in writing, and that if you have to write a personal statement, make sure that other people read it and make sure that your message is getting across. And also something that Piers mentioned on, if you're gonna reach out to a professor, read some papers, try to get an understanding. Nobody's expecting you to understand everything in a paper, but be honest of why you're interested in that laboratory, in that research, and definitely use some of the background that you read to put in your email or if you have an interview. So very, very important advice there. So now I want to ask about your mentors. So now you're in a laboratory, you have creating these new relationships with faculty members and others in the laboratory. So how, first maybe talk about if mentors have played a big role in your academic and career life. And if so, then how do you go about establishing those relationships and maintaining them? And as we know, many of them are going to be references in the future. They're gonna write letters of recommendation for you. So can you address a little bit this topic? And again, let's go in the same order, Lynn, Piers, and Courtney.
Well, my mentor really gave me a lot of advice for not just in the lab, but also out of the lab. Like he really explained his career to me, like how he went from going to college here to working in the lab he is in right now. And that really just opened my eyes to like how different everyone's journey is and how important it is to really hop on every opportunity you get. And as for like building relationships with mentors, I think it's really important to ask a lot of questions and just to like in general show how engaged you are with what you're doing and how much you really want to learn. Like they're there to help you. You don't have to figure things out on your own.
So my mentor kind of guided me through the world of research because I really had like no idea how anything worked because this was my first experience in a lab. They helped teach me skills. They taught me like it's okay if like you don't get something right the first time in science. Always try, just to have a good work ethic. Actually, the first day I started interning at Scripps, my mentor gave me a paper, an article that essentially talked about imposter syndrome, where someone feels like they're not smart enough to be in a lab. And she just told me like be confident in yourself and also like just be proactive in lab meetings, like volunteer to present during a lab meeting. There's like I said before, there's a project you really want to like be a part of, volunteer to like join that project. Just like put yourself out there, be very enthusiastic.
Very important. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, so I agree with both what Lynn and Piers said. I think mentors are there for you to go and ask questions. So don't be afraid. Put yourself out there, go and ask the questions if you're not sure. So like I said, I switched from biochemistry to immunology and I had no idea what I was doing at first. So my mentor, she really was super helpful. She pulled up old PowerPoints and was teaching me all these things about immunology. She would give me old immunology textbooks, different papers to read. So they're there. That's what they signed up to be a mentor for. They're there to help you. As terms of like reaching out to people, your PI, your people in the lab can be mentors. Your peers can be mentors if they have skills that they have that you don't. So yeah, I think just reach out to people that you think will have some sort of benefit for your scientific goals, or even if it's not for scientific and it's for career goals, if there's someone else that's doing something that you're interested in, go and ask them questions about it. And most likely they will be happy to tell you about it and how they got there.
This is great advice. Thank you so much. I think at this point, maybe it's a good time to stop for a moment, take our second poll. And I see some of you are typing in your questions, which is great. I want to remind everybody that this is the time to type in your questions. You can do it anonymously or with your name. So there it is, the next poll on your screen. If you can please take a moment to answer the questions and let us know how we're doing so far. And then we'll be taking your questions. So I see a few of you are logging in your questions. I'm just gonna give a few more moments. Well, thank you for letting us know about how we're doing. So I see that you're enjoying hearing the panelist experience and getting advice on future opportunities. And you basically want to hear a little bit about most of the topics here, skills that you need for internship, and what a research intern basically does in a laboratory. So thank you so much for that. And with that, I think that we can move on to our questions. So the first one I see here is, how long were your internship experiences, and was this enough to learn the skills like cutting and staining tissues like Piers mentioned? Was this enough time? Piers, maybe you want to start?
Okay, so I've been interning since January of 2019, and probably around like a month and a half into my internship, I was self-sufficient and confident with like the skills like cutting the brain tissue. And then once when I was confident with that, the postdoc I was working with showed me how to use the fluorescent microscope. But honestly, you're constantly learning new things, and no one is perfect at a particular task. So that's why it's really important to talk to your mentors, because like for cutting brain tissue, there's so many ways to do it. Like one person might have their way, then another person, like another researcher in the lab, might have a completely opposite way. One of those ways might work for you. One of those ways might not work for you. So it's all about just like talking and just like really putting the time in, honestly.
Great advice. Lynn, you wanted to say something?
Oh yeah. My internship, the summer one, was 8 weeks, but for high school, the first week you go to a like a boot camp at our local community college, and they really taught you a lot of basic skills like how to pipette, how to dilute solutions, and just how to use basic lab equipment. And then I ended up continuing my internship throughout the school year. And I want to say like the first couple weeks, it's really like they're holding your hand. Like my lab did a kind of boot camp thing like by themselves, where we ran through activities on how to use like the fluorescence machine and just how to make a lot of solutions and stuff. So
Courtney, you want to add something?
Yeah, so my internships usually were around 8 to 10 weeks for the summers. So when I was at Scripps, it was 8 to 10 weeks. And when I did my summer internship in undergrad, it was 8 to 10 weeks. My undergraduate research was throughout the school year. So the summer internship was really the first time I got into doing the research. I had started only a few months before, so that was the first time I really was able to engage in it. So the first 3 weeks was a lot of learning techniques. But after that, we were all pretty much just going through our research on our own. And then when I was at Scripps, because it was so new and I was also working with animal models, it was a lot longer of a learning curve. So I'd say it was more of like a month or so that I was really working closely with my mentor. And then after that, I was trying to do more independent research, and my PI was very not adamant. He was very wanting me to do independent research on my own. So he kept pushing me to become more and more independent, which I think is really important. So yeah, by the end of a month, I would say I was pretty much on my own, but I could go and ask questions if I needed help still.
That's great. So our next question is, how can I engage in research at Scripps or join a lab beginning my freshman year? Maybe Piers or Courtney want to try
I
this
can
one.
take this one. So essentially just find like a lab that interests you, email the PI, definitely tell them you're a freshman, because some of these PIs, they like getting freshmen on, because that means if you decide to stay at the lab for the majority of your college career, you're going to be in there for 4 years. So they can put the time into you to like have you learn like new tasks or like tasks that take like a year to master. I would honestly say though, start as a freshman, start early. So you can like allow you get more involved in the lab and learn the most.
Great. So somebody mentioned Pubmed. Can anybody explain what Pubmed is? That was a question.
So PubMed is just, it's a good resource to be able to look up papers. You can also, I saw the question also asked if that was the only place you can look for papers. I also use Google Scholar, or you can even just Google topics and papers will come up. So it's definitely not the only resource, but PubMed is a really good compilation of information if you want to look things up if you're interested in a particular topic.
Great. So how competitive are internship programs in general? It doesn't need to be only for Scripps. And what things can students work to make their application more strong or successful?
For me, I think, I don't know how competitive they normally are. I'd say they're pretty competitive. And for me, what really helped was looking into the types of labs I could be placed in, and then stating like, oh, I'm interested in this, even if I didn't have any experience in it at all, and just really showing that you are willing to put the work in and that you really want to be there.
Yeah, I agree with Lynn. Also, don't be discouraged if you get rejection letters. I applied to probably like 10 or 12 internships when I was applying for when I went to the SERF program. And I got accepted to 1 or 2, and that's what most of my friends that were applying to internships also got. So don't be discouraged. There's something out there for everyone. Just apply to a bunch that you think would be a good fit, and something will work out for sure.
Just honestly make sure have a really strong, personable resume. Then also, like during an interview, tell your the prospective PI things about yourself. Show that you're a well-rounded student. Tell them about the extracurriculars you do.
Yeah, and Courtney, thank you for mentioning that, because it's true. It's not only your friend. Like a lot of students say the same thing. They only got into 1 or 2 internship opportunities. But you know, that's what it counts, that you get into one and you make the best of that one. So thank you for sharing that information. So the next question, it's again about joining a laboratory. So is the first step contacting a faculty member or a PI that interests you? Would you say that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well.
Okay. Do you feel the skills you get in your internship or research experience still apply if you changed your research field, or even maybe you decide you don't like to do research and you change careers?
Yeah, I'll comment on this. So yeah, I came from a RNA biochemistry lab. We did a lot of molecular bio and microbiology techniques, which I think are kind of basic useful skills for a lot of different labs. So I do use some of those skills in immunology. Mostly I learned a bunch of new skills when I joined the immunology lab. but I think just having a basic understanding of how to conduct research is useful and can be applied to other labs. So it's not just the scientific skills that you learn, it's just the general thinking and way you carry yourself in a lab is useful in different lab situations in different fields.
So like with research in general, like it just teaches you like certain skills that are just good in life, like time management, and then also just how to approach a problem and to be very detail oriented. So like, let's say like if someone does research, decides that's not one they want to do, and they want to go into like law, skills from research will still like benefit that individual because it teaches you to go look at details. And if there's a problem, it teaches you like a step-by-step basis on how to approach and eventually solve that problem.
Great, thank you. The next question, as a high school student, how can you manage research experiences and schoolwork? Does this only, oh, it went away. Oh, does this only work over the summer? And Lynn, you have experience with it over the academic year.
Yeah, so I continued my internship throughout the school year, and I'm not gonna lie, it was pretty hard because so I was pretty involved in school. Like I was still able to balance, like I ran track and cross country, and then I still had to run throughout the winter season for conditioning because you can just like stop. So it was really hard balancing doing that after school as well as going to the lab after school on some days. And then I wasn't really allowed in during the weekends, but if you really, really want to do it, I think you can make it work no matter like what situation you're in.
Thank you. And then the next question, can you still be accepted into a research program if you don't have any previous lab experiences? I can definitely say that, yes, this is true. Anybody wants to comment on this?
Yeah, that's definitely true. Because like before I applied for the internship program at Scripps, I had no prior lab experience. I was just like, I knew nothing about research.
Then the next question, how hands-on can the internship be, especially in labs with viruses or other dangerous things? Is it worth to try to get experience in that lab or a lab that does more basic things? Before any of you take this one, I would say that also the institutes have different rules. So there are some laboratories where we cannot place high school interns, but we can place undergraduates. So if we place you in that laboratory, I'm sure this is true for other institutes, they are, I'm sure they're certain that there's a project there for you that you can basically, learn the skills and then run away with it in that sense. Anybody who wants to add to this? You feel that there was something dangerous, or what about animal work? Were you hesitant before doing it?
Yeah, I can take this one. So essentially it's just, you got to just learn like how to be careful, really focus on details. So like when I work with mice, they have a tendency to bite. And then also like you don't want to hurt the animal. And then also what we would do, me working in a drug addiction lab, we would deal with substances such as heroin or cocaine, which we need to inject into the mice. So it's just essentially just being careful and listening to what your mentor says.
Yeah, kind of building off of that, if there is something more dangerous that you're going to be working on in lab, I'm sure a mentor would be there to help you and show you the way. So it's not like you're going to be going in blindly and just hoping to get it right. So they'll definitely be there for help, and they won't let you do something until they think you're ready to do something. So you're not just going to be thrown into it.
Thank you. So does the scientist in the lab treat you nicely? Is it a collaborative environment? So how is the team? Anybody want to? Oh, go ahead, Lynn.
Everyone I met was super supportive and really nice to me, especially when I first came in and, didn't know where anything was and was obviously lost. But yeah, everyone's just open for you to ask questions to, because everyone kind of specializes in something different. So if you're curious, just, I'm pretty sure they'll be nice to you.
Yeah, I agree. And also everyone has to start out somewhere. So everyone kind of knows that experience of not knowing how to do things or knowing where things are and being new in a lab. So everyone is super helpful. And if they're not, just move on to the next person in lab, and hopefully someone can help you with what you're particularly needing help with.
See, like in the lab I work in, it's a very great supportive environment. They're there to like see you succeed. Everyone's nice. They tell you like ask questions. Like if you want to like if you're confused with something, just go up, ask.
Great, thank you. And the last question here is about the Blue program, I think on the Florida campus. So we're gonna be taking applications again in the fall. Feel free to contact me and I'll give you more information on that. Oh, there's one more question here. What is it one thing you wish you had done when applying or during your internship to make you more successful in science? And this will be the last question. Lynn?
Sorry, I'm gonna think for like a second.
Well, anyone else wants to jump in first?
Yeah, I can jump in. So essentially, I wish I would have applied for an internship in my during undergrad a little earlier. So I applied spring of my sophomore semester, which for the school I go to is relatively pretty early, but I wish I would have applied like second semester of my freshman year or even during my freshman year, like first semester.
Yeah, I agree with Piers. So in my undergraduate experience, I joined the lab the spring of my sophomore year, and that was just a kind of a training semester, so I didn't really gain that much experience. So really just started experiencing that the summer I stayed. So I do wish I started reaching out to PIs earlier than that. Like I think gauging your interest in certain labs your first year, if you're interested in doing research, is a good thing just to get your name out there, to be talking to PIs that you're interested in. You don't have to pick a lab, but it's good to start talking to a few different PIs that you're interested in possibly working with, so you can do more research. You can figure out what you think will be the most useful for you.
So for me, I wish that I talked to more people around the campus in general. So we were able to, like the high school program, every Wednesday we would have a speaker from different labs and from different like career paths talking to us. And I wish I engaged a little bit more with them just to find out more like different pathways you can take, because this field is so broad. So I'd say take advantage of who's around you and ask anybody like questions.
Right. And so there's a note that we wanted to add, that going back to working in laboratory and not being sure if you're going to be working with viruses or other substances. So we wanted to mention that all controlled substances and animal work is highly regulated, and there are committees and agencies that oversee all these. So we do it in a correct and humane way. And with that, then I'd like to ask all of you to give you maybe your final remarks, and let's ask one fun question. I'm sure that you have hobbies and the such, so maybe it's not all work, right? So what's a fun thing that you do? And Lynn?
I run a lot. Like I said before, I ran track and cross country throughout high school. So I really like staying active. I like playing tennis, working out. I really like painting too, and just spending time with people I love.
Great. Piers?
So a thing I do for fun is nature photography. So I don't know if you guys can see, but the photo above me, that is one of my pieces. I've done stuff with National Geographic Society back when I was in high school, and currently have a piece up at the United States Capitol and at the Florida State Capitol. So, and when interviewing for labs, I use this as a way to show like I'm really well-rounded. I'm a well-rounded individual. And I use the fact that I run my own photography business to show that I have additional skills and like, I don't know, just being like able to communicate with people in a business-like fashion that other interns might not potentially have.
Awesome. Courtney?
I like to cook and bake a lot, so that's something that's been really fun during this time of pandemic. I also just like going outside, taking a walk, going through the nature, beautiful areas that is down here, like going to the beach when it's open. So yeah, there's just stuff to take your mind off of science is really helpful.
That's great. Well, I'd like to thank you, all of you, for being here and answering all my questions and all the attendees' questions. I think it was great advice. We're going to be posting this video on our Canvas page, on the first webinar page. And I'm sure that many students are going to take advantage of what you had to say. At this point, there's going to be our third and final poll just to see how we did. And I appreciate if you can take a moment to answer these questions. And while you do that, I can tell you that the next webinar at the same time is on Thursday, and it's going to be on bioinformatics. It's going to be a demo. And bioinformatics is a kind of like a newer hot topic in science. And it's good to have that as a part of your project, or even if you decide to do that as your major or your PhD. So please join us for that one. And we have other webinars coming up. The schedule is on our webpage at Scripps or either our Canvas page. So please visit our pages to learn more about the future webinars. And just giving a few more moments for people to log in their answers. Thank you. It looks like you enjoyed our panel discussion today and you are leaving motivated. So we appreciate this. And when we close the call, you're gonna be redirected to a survey in SurveyMonkey. So please, if you can take that one. And at the end, there's gonna be a place for you to type in other topics that you like to learn of or to hear about. It's a great opportunity for you to tell us a little bit more of what you want to hear, and we will work on getting those on the future webinars. And with these, I'd like to thank everybody, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.